at the end of this. What my goal is today is to go over as much as I can with you on the tablet so that you are more knowledgeable and you can help your consumers better. So y'all should have all received a handout when y'all signed up for this class that you could print out, and that's what I'm going to be going by. I might jump around a little bit on it, but I try to stick to it as best as I can. So, the first thing I want to talk about is what our tablet actually looks like and how I view it and teach how to know how to navigate it, um, to make it easier to try to streamline it. So I always look at this tablet and I divide it into 4 sections. Okay, so we have the tabs that run across the top all the way from file all the way to the little I with a circle around it, which stands for information. And those are your tabs. Those are constants. They're always on the screen. They never disappear. Now, depending on what tab you are in, depends on what changes right here in what we call the ribbon area. And this whole row all the way across is the ribbon. Now, it is a variable. It's going to change according to the tab that we are in. You can see that when I select a different tab, that whole row changes. Now, once we have selected something in the ribbon, like resize, we can come over here to this right side of our screen, which is called the right sidebar, and we can see all the things that we can do with the function that we have selected. So we selected resize, and here's where you can change it by the width, the height, lock the proportions, come click in this little box and change the size of it. Okay. Now the fourth side is this left toolbar over here on the left side of your screen. These tools are always on here. They're constants also. They never disappear. They never change. They're just there. Okay. And they're quick reference buttons, things that we will use a lot. So that's why they have them as a toolbar over here, because a lot of these tools in this toolbar are also in one of these tabs in the ribbon area. Okay. Now, I say I divide it into 4 sections, but actually I should probably say 5 because now I also talk
Kelly,
about
excuse me,
yes.
Kelly.
Yeah.
Judith and Angela already have a question. You guys want to unmute yourself, please? Judith, you want to unmute yourself?
The controls bar is across the screen, and I don't know if that's on our end, but it seems like whenever you move the cursor on your end, it brings that controls bar back up, that has the mute and all that, and we can't see the entire
Screen.
diagram.
I think that's on your side of it then.
No, I don't think so. It's gone away on mine, but every time you touch the screen or you move your mouse around, it pops back up. But it's the one that's got the telephone on it, the hand on it, the microphone on it.
I have it on my screen, but I constantly move that around so that I can see other things on my screen. So
Can you make it larger?
I can't make it larger. It's as large as it can go on my screen.
We can't make it larger here either. And you can't drag it out of the way.
Do you see it moving on the screen right now?
What?
I only see your mouse. I don't see anything else.
Okay, because see, right now, what you're saying you can see that's blocking things on my screen, I'm moving it around with my mouse right now because it's where I can see it, but you can't see it. And you can't see mine anyway that's on my screen because I have to move it around to be able to get to other things on my screen while I'm showing you this. So I can actually take it and put my mouse on it. Whoops. Sorry. Hold on. I can actually take it and put my mouse on it and drag it around with my finger on my little pad on my computer. So I don't know if you can do that with yours.
Well, I'm using a mouse and I can put the hand on that bar, but it doesn't drag it anywhere.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to help you on that. I really apologize. It's not at the bottom of my screen. So it must be like a setting or something with Team Meets on your computer that maybe can be changed. I don't know.
Ken, you got a question, Ken?
No,
Kelley?
I was just going to say that if you take your mouse and you touch anywhere on the screen and then don't touch it again, it'll go away until you re-enter the screen with your mouse.
Thank you, Ken.
Okay.
I'll try that.
Okay, let's see if all of us computer challenged people can get through this because I'm just as challenged as you are. Okay. So what I was going to talk about was the bottom of the screen right down here. So at the very bottom of the screen, we have 3 very important buttons on the left-hand side. It's select all, multi-select, and select none. And these are functions that we would use if we have multiple designs on our screen at one time. We can use it to only select one and do editing to that one, or we can tell it to select all and change the size of everything at one time. Or we can hit select none and then multi-select, and we can select it in the order we want things to be sewn out in. So those are really important buttons, especially when you start custom quilting. The next important thing is right next door to it. It looks like a sewing machine and then 2 arrows in a white gear looking box. Right now on my screen, they're green because I'm in simulation mode, but this is something like if a customer calls you and says, my machine is tracing and not sewing, you would say at the bottom of the screen, do you have a red sewing machine and communication errors? Because if they do, that means that the machine and the tablet have quit speaking to one another. And it's an easy fix. One fix is just rebooting the whole system, but another fix would be to actually go into the settings icon up top or the settings tab, and then going to communication and telling it to reconnect to the machine. So that's basically telling the Pro Stitcher, start talking to the machine again so it can stitch. Just an easy, quick fix. And that's something that I will sometimes ask people when I'm troubleshooting with them. What does the color of your sewing machine at the bottom of your screen look like? So that's super important. The other most important button down here is all the way to the right-hand side, and I have my cursor over it right now, and it says refresh. Well, it did. Now it does again. This refresh button, anytime you can't see something that you have on your screen or you can't see your crosshair, if you select this refresh button, it brings everything into your viewing so that you can see everything. So that's another super important button. The rest are not as important. This one right here will show you the actual size of the design if it were to be stitched out right now. So it makes it very large on the screen so you're only able to see part of it. So I don't use that very often. Okay, so that's the sections of the tablet. Again, since we kind of had a little bit of confusion at the beginning, I'm going to go over that real quickly one more time. You have your tabs that run across the top that are a constant. Below that, depending on what tab you are in, the ribbon will change, which is the whole row below it. And depending on what you select in the ribbon, the right sidebar will change. And then you have your toolbars over here that are constants that are always there, that are buttons that we will use quite often when using the Pro Stitcher. Okay, so now let's get started with talking about what each tab does. So our File tab is where we will go if we need to pull in a design, pull in a saved workspace that we've saved, or pull in an area that we have saved. Then it's also where you actually will save your designs, where you will close them out, where you can clear all and have a brand new white sheet of paper, where you go to update the Pro Stitcher, and where you also go to shut down your program at the end of the day. So there's only one correct way to shut your Pro Stitcher program down, and that is to go to File, Shut Down, and select Shut Down again, and let that tablet completely turn off by itself. And then you would go through the steps of turning off your machine and then unplugging from the wall. But this is the correct way of shutting down the tablet. There's an exception to that of when your tablet has been frozen and you can't do anything but select the power button on the tablet itself and hold it down. That's when you just don't have a choice. But sometimes we see weird things happen when people do not shut down and turn on their system in the correct order. So that's very important to know. Now, if we go to our Edit tab, this is just like Edit in Microsoft Word. It's copy, cut, paste, duplicate. You won't start using this that much until you get into advanced custom quilting, okay? I don't use these icons very often. I do use them sometimes. The most important thing on this tab is this history button. If you see that your machine or your tablet is sluggish or not responding well, you might want to come in here and just select clear history and clear all your history out so there's nothing running in the background anymore. So that's everything on the Edit tab. When you go to the Area tab, there's 4 different things that you see that are highlighted. File is where you can just go pull in an area that you've saved, okay? Or you can pull in, there should be, yeah, right here, areas that are already created for you that you can use and pull into the Pro Stitcher, okay? Then you have a 2-corner area and a multi-point area, and that's where we're going to set an area to actually insert a design into and quilt it out. 2-corner is what you use when you're going to do an edge to edge. You'll give it a top left-hand reference point, which would usually be right outside the left-hand top corner of your quilt. And then you would always go across to the other side of your quilt and as far down on the right as you can go and give it the second location or reference point for it to know the area. Now, once you do that, I'm going to do that real quickly right here. I'm going to move my cursor to the top left-hand corner of my quilt and select 2-corner. And then I'm going to move it as far to the right and down as I can and select 2-corner again. On a regular quilt, on a regular machine, like right now I'm in simulation mode, so I'm just doing this from my computer. But if I was actually on my tablet, on my machine, my width right now would be very accurate to the width of my quilt, but the height would not be. And what we do is we click into that height box and we actually change it to the actual length of our quilt so that it can be correct. I'm going to change the width today too, just because it's hard to make it the size I want to in simulation mode. Once I hit that refresh button, now I can see the entire quilt on my screen, which is important to me because I like to create the entire quilt, not just one row at a time when I'm doing an edge-to-edge quilting. The other one is the multi-point, and that's where you can give it as many points as you want to create an area. You'll use this to create, curved areas, to create a block that might not be completely square, so you're going to give it more than just the 4 corners of the block. You're going to give it maybe 8 to 10 points going all the way around it. And then they have this other option right here called quilting space. I personally do not use this quilting space, but what this quilting space is there for is if you want to give it, besides just an area, you also want to give it a quilting space where you know the safe zones of where your machine can travel on that frame and you can visibly see it on the screen itself. Now, as you advance your quilt, you would have to reset that quilting space because your quilting space does change as that back bar grows on the frame with a quilt being rolled up on it. The only other thing is this ribbon RB area, which stands for ribbon area. And you can see that when I select that, it takes the area and it just goes around it like it would if you put a rubber band around it. So it's not going to be a perfect square. It's going to just be touching the outermost points of that design. You wonder why they have that there. If I were to undo that, well, let me see if I can, yeah, there we go. If I were to take that off and I were to actually go get a shape that would work for this, I could come in here and I could go to block designs and just select a triangle. And if I were to select a triangle and tell it to, hold on, let me move my little box right here out of the way. And I were to tell it to rubber band that area, when I select RB area, it actually takes that triangle design and it turns it into an area because there's no curved edges to a triangle. They're all straight edges. There's no concave sides to it. So it would perfectly make that triangle an area. What's cool about that is that if I were to want to have something just in that triangle that was like a background design, I could come in here and select a background design. Let me find one real quick. And I could put that design over that triangle, just like this. And then I could go and actually crop the stitches outside of that triangle and around the edges, and then I have a triangle of clamshells right there. So again, this is something that you're going to use when you're more advanced and you're doing more custom quilting. Okay, let's clear this again. There we go. So that's everything under the area tab. When you go to the Modify tab, we're going to be looking at several different things. This is where all the things that we can do to change the design that we have selected. So right now I could come in here and select rotate, and I could rotate this design at different angles. I could even do just 1 degree angles. Let me put it back to where it needs to be to start. There it goes. I can flip it side to side or top to bottom if I needed to. And again, I could rotate it at 1 degree angles right here. If we go to reposition, I want to talk about this for just a second. People get confused with reposition and align, and you'll see that align and skew right now are not dark where I can use them. They're grayed out. And that's because align and skew both have to have an area created to even be able to use those functions. What reposition does is it repositions your design according to what you select over here on the right-hand side. So if I were to say, I want you to reposition this design according to where the start point is, what it's going to do when I select start point is it's going to take the start point of this design and put it at the center of my crosshair. So you see what just happened there? There was the start point of my design, and now my crosshair is dead on it. So your reposition is repositioning it with your design with your crosshair. So I say that, but then when you come down here to this nudge box has nothing to do with your crosshair or your area. It is just simply where your design is at this very moment. If you need to just barely nudge it down or barely nudge it to the left, it's going to just move this design a little bit. And it has nothing to do with where the crosshair or the area is at, just solely the design. Okay. So just to help you understand a little bit more, if I were to hit top left, the top left-hand part of this design is going to come right here where it's below the crosshair because it's lining it up according to the top left part of the design with the crosshair. To help you better understand that a little bit better, I'm going to select the bottom right so that you can see that it goes to the opposite side of our crosshair because it's lining it up with the bottom right side of our design. Okay. So reposition has everything to do with where your design is in relationship to your crosshair minus the nudge feature. Now I'm going to set an area again real quickly. And now I'll be able to show you the difference between reposition and align. So now that I have an area set, align and skew both are black again. Now what align does is it takes the pattern and it aligns it with the area that has been set. So if I wanted this design to be lined up to the left-hand side of the design with the area, I would select horizontally left, and it's going to put it to the left-hand side of my area. If I were to tell it to do vertically on the top, then it's going to pop it down where the top part of my design is at the top of the area. Okay. Now, looking at that, let me move my crosshair where it's not as much in the way of the viewing of the pink box. If I were to want it to completely center itself in this block, I could come over here to the stretch option and select stretch. And what it does is it stretches it horizontally and vertically where it's centered in the block. Okay. I hope these things are making sense to you. I use Align a lot when I am setting up an edge-to-edge design, and I'm going to tell you why. There are times that when I set up an edge-to-edge design, I always horizontally set it up to the left and vertically to the top, so that if I have multiple repeats, and I'm going to do a couple of repeats real quick for y'all of this design, and I want it to be where I'm only cutting off the edges when I use the crop feature on the bottom and the side, I will use this align feature. The reason why is because I'm OCD to an extent, and I like to have a clean left side and a clean top to my quilt when I first start quilting. That way I know that if I crop, I'm not going to have a bunch of straight lines and starts and stops on the side or the top of my quilt. It'll only be at the bottom and on the right-hand side of my quilt, okay? And what I mean by that is right now, if I were to hit crop and tell it to crop everything on the outside and the edges, which it's not doing a great representation of what I'm talking about now because it so equally has just one repeat in it when I do that. It won't have a ton of starts and stops and straight line quilting on these two sides. It'll only be on these two sides. And that is personal preference for Kelley. That's not something that you have to do. Okay. So that's the difference between reposition and align. Align, again, takes your design and aligns it with the actual quilt area you've set, repositions your design with the crosshair. Okay? Okay, so resize is a very, very important thing for us to always look at, and we always should look at this first. What I'm going to do real quickly to show you better is I'm going to close out this design and open it back up. I'm going to actually close out this triangle too. Hold on one second. And I'm going to bring that design back in, this one. The reason why is I want to talk to you about the original size of this design. If we were to right now look at the design size itself, it is 17 inches wide and 17 inches tall. And for any machine that we sell right now, that is too big of a design for the throat space we have. When you are thinking about throat spaces of your machine, you're always going to take the throat space size. Like if we have a Quilt Maker Pro 20, we're going to take that number 20 and we're going to subtract 6 inches from it where we get 14. And we are going to know that safely, not immediately, but safely, if we wanted to quilt a king size quilt, we could with a 14-inch depth of a pattern. Now, can you start out with a bigger pattern than that on your very first row of quilting? You absolutely can. But as you, again, advance your quilt, that back bar grows with your quilt and you lose throat space because of that. So I always tell people as a rule of thumb, take your throat space and minus 6 inches and never let the height of your design be greater than that. So if I wanted to quilt this design on a quilt right now, the very first thing I would do before I do anything else is change the size of this design. So to do that, I would select, there we go. I would select resize. And then I would come over here and I would select this lock feature. What this lock feature does is it locks the proportions so that if I were to change the size of this design just based on the height, at the same time, it will change the width accordingly to what it needs to be to keep it all in proportion to one another. So I would come down in here to this box and I would just change it to whatever size I want it to be, which I'm going to change it to 12 inches tall, which coincidentally makes it 12 inches wide. Before I were to do anything else with this, when I change the size of a design, I'm always going to come to my toolbars over here on the left-hand side and select baseline. What baseline does is it forgets the original size of this design. So as we do repeats, and then we might use the crop feature, it's going to keep that 12-inch design 12 inches. If I were not to baseline this right now, and I were to go add repeats, and then I were to go to use crop, when I use crop, it would go back to that 17-inch size because it didn't hold that size before we started making other major changes to it, okay? Baseline is a very, very important button that we have to play with this to know when we're supposed to use it. The only time I can guarantee you have to use it is when you have an area set and you're going to use a crop feature. You need to always baseline before and after you crop. And then again, like we just talked about, anytime you have one single design and you're going to change the size of it, you're going to baseline after you change the size of it. Hold on one second, y'all. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear a lot of background noise, but my dog was digging in the carpet like it was digging a hole, and I thought it was too loud, so I had to put her outside my office door and close it. Okay, so that is resize. Crop, we've already talked about a little bit, but crop is where you can take a design, and if it's outside your area, you can crop all the stitches outside your area, or you can crop all the stitches inside your area. And when you do those two features, a lot of times you're going to want to select the edges because it cleans up your edges so there's not a ton of starts and stops. Now, there's another feature right here called start and end. Let me pull in a different design to show you what this does. If I were to bring in this design right here, and I'm just going to move it on my screen real quick so it's kind of more in line with where I can have it bigger on our screen for y'all. Well, that didn't make it too much bigger. Let me move my crosshair a little bit. There, that's about as good as I can get. Okay, so again, we're going to talk about this crop feature again. So what the start and end does is I could come in here and let's say I just want this pine tree for it to stitch out. I don't want to stitch out the rest of this design. I can create a new start point real quickly by going to Pro Stitcher, New Start and End, and selecting the auto button twice. The reason why I have to select the auto button twice is because the first time it will attach the green circle to my crosshair. And if I were to move my crosshair, that green circle travels with it. But if I want to plant that green circle in its place and leave it there, I have to select that auto button for a second time so that when I move my crosshair, it stays in place. So now what I'm going to do is also do an endpoint for this. Okay. So now I have a start and an endpoint that's changed from my original design. If I were to go to Bonify now and go to crop and select start and end, it's going to crop everything before my start point and after my end point. Now, if this is what I wanted to do, I would immediately need to baseline this after I did that. Okay, so I hope that that's kind of a cool thing. I have used this as an example when I created a quilt and I had like blocks. I had created a house quilt and I had blank blocks in between some of my houses, and I wanted to put flowers in some of them and trees in some of them and a dog in one of them. And what I did was I came in here and I actually cropped trees out of like this design that I just showed you so that I could just use the tree and not use the moose and the tree. Okay, so it's a really neat thing to show your consumers when you're trying to sell them on this product, because they can get creative and their juices start running of, oh, wow, I could do this, this, and this on that quilt that I've got at home that I've never quilted before, because now there's all these different options I can do with taking parts of designs and using them in my quilt and not using the entire design. So it's a really cool feature. Okay, so we've already talked about align. I want to jump over to skew. What skew does is it will take your design and it'll fill it into the area that you've selected as big as it can, filling in as much of it as it can. The question is which skew do you use? 90% of the time, you're going to use border skew because border skew usually works. So right now, if I were to select border skew, my tree is going to get put in this area as big as it can, filling all the edges out. If I were to select this skew, it might, well, it didn't mess it up. Let me get a block design because that will help us here. Let's see. I'll just do this one. So, and let me reset my area real quick because this is a perfect squared area. So of course it's going to do everything perfectly for me. But if we were to be in the real world and we were trying to just set a block with a design in it, it might not be a perfect block. And if we are using our multi-point like we should, then we're giving it a bunch of different points because our square might not be perfect. So I'm going to do a couple more here. Okay. Now, if I were to want to use that skew feature here and I selected border skew, it's going to do a very good job of putting that in this area. But if I were to select the other skew, it might make it look awful. And that's because the difference between skew and border skew is concave and convex designs, or the shape of your area, not your design. I'm sorry. So definitely border skew is what we would use. Okay, and I don't know why it seems like all of our designs usually work with border skew than skew, but they just do. I don't remember much about math because like I think we learned about concave and convex designs when we were like in what, 5th grade, I think, something like that. But I know that one sucks in and one bulges out, and that's the difference between the skew and the border skew. Now, you'll see that there's also a triangle skew down here and that it's grayed out. The reason why it's grayed out is because when you are going to use triangle skew, your area can only have 3 multi-points. It can't have any more than that or any less than that. Otherwise, the triangle skew does not even get dark where you can use it. Okay. Now, I wish that they would change that, and I've asked that to be an improvement the next time we have an update, but we'll see what happens. I would like it if we could give a triangle skew as many points as we want to, and it still skew it, because most of my triangles are not perfect. So when I use triangle skew, my design in it is still not quite perfect enough for me. Okay. So that is skew. This swapping in is swapping the start and end point. You can see that when I selected it, my start point came onto the right-hand side and my end point came to the left-hand side. This is a great feature when you are having to take a design and possibly flip it and change it around. I'm going to close out this design right here and get a better design to show you what I mean by that. So let me just get this chest set. Let's say for some reason, I don't know what, we had to come in here and we had to flip this chest piece, okay? And we were gonna have to sew it out like this. Maybe it's the bottom border of our quilt, and we're just sewing it upside down, okay? Well, this is fine to have it like this, but one thing that we would want to do is change the start and end points and swap them, because you don't want your quilt machine, when it doesn't have to quilt from right to left. You always want to let it quilt left to right. It just will have less thread breakage that way. So this is one of those times where I would want to swap my start and end point before I start quilting this design. And that is simply all that feature does right there. So right now, are there any questions about the features underneath the Modify tab? Okay, I'm going to take that as a no. Okay, let me, for the next thing that we're going to look at, let me reset an area real quick. And again, because I'm on simulation, I'm going to come over here and actually manually change this to a 45 by 60 quilt. It's hard to do that when you're in simulation, trying to get it accurate by just doing a 2-corner. Okay, so here we go. Here's our quilt, okay? And we're going to bring in a design that can be repeated. I'm going to actually go into design and PS designs and continuous lines, and I'm going to find Field of Flowers. Now, all the designs are in alphabetical order, and so is all the folders of designs. You can see that the first folders of my designs start with numbers, and then they start with A, B, C, D, E, F, G after that. So I'm going to open this design up, and the first thing I'm always going to look at is what is the size of this design before I do anything else. So I'm going to look over here at the right side, and I can see that the height of this design is 9 inches. That is completely safe for all of the machines throat spaces that we have. But let's say we are quilting for the public and we want to quilt this quilt where it's less dense and it quilts faster. I would actually want to make this design bigger. So I'm going to go under the Modify tab and resize. I'm going to lock my proportions, and according to the height or the depth of my design, I'm going to change that to 12 inches. Okay. Now that I've changed that, I'm going to baseline this design. Okay. Now, if I wanted to fill this whole quilt in with this design, I'm then going to go to the next tab that we're going to talk about, which is the Repeat tab. On the Repeat tab, you can see we have Basic and Wrap. We're going to stick with Basic for this. Wrap you would use if you were doing like a clamshell pattern where you have to have every other row offset from the row above it. Okay. But we're going to do Basic for this one. The first thing I always do when I go get ready to set up an edge to edge is I come over here to this right sidebar and I select Fill. And what Fill does is it fills in as many repeats as it can without going outside your pink area box. Now, I automatically see some things that are not right with this. First, it didn't fill in my area, so I've got to add some more repeats horizontally to it. And second, I can just see a distinction between each of my rows, and I don't want that. I want it to be that when somebody looks at this quilt, they can't tell where one row starts and one row begins. So what I would do first is zoom in to where the 2 rows are meeting, which is this whole area right here, okay? And then I would go to the vertical repeats over here where it's highlighted green, and I would come in and change this gap. I want to close in that gap between my 2 rows. So the more I minus this, the closer those 2 designs are going to get to each other. Okay. And now if I think I like this space right here compared to this space right here where it's not 2 rows meeting together, this is actually inside that 1 row of design, then I'm going to then hit my refresh button and look at it from afar and say, oh, that looks pretty good. I can't really see the distinction where the rows are starting and ending. But it kind of concerns me right here. It looks like it might be close. So I'm going to zoom into that area of the quilt and just check it out. And now that I zoom into it, I'm still okay with that spacing because there still is a significant amount of space right here so that our patterns don't accidentally overlap if we don't drag and drop perfectly when we are advancing our quilt. So I'm happy with that gap now. Now I need to fix how it's not filling in my quilt. So I'm going to go to the horizontal repeats and I'm going to add another repeat going horizontally. Now, so far I'm happy with that. I can see now that part of my design is coming outside the edges of the sides of my area, but from the top to bottom, it's not quite filling it in. So I can easily fix that. I can come over here while it's still highlighted for horizontal and I can select stretch and it squishes it into the area. And then I can select vertical and select stretch again and it stretches it to the top and the bottom. It did not distort my design. I like the way it looks, so I'm very happy with it. So this is where in the point in time I would come over here and select baseline. When you select baseline, it's now saved this as just one design and it's perfectly ready for us to quilt it. The only thing I always recommend people to do is to go to File, Save, Selected, and find them a folder they want to save this in so that if they need to come back and retrieve it because something happened, they can. Now, I have a folder called Kelley, and this is where I like to save a lot of my quilts that I quilt for people. If I'm quilting it for someone, like a friend of mine, I will actually name the quilt their name. Like I'm just going to name this one Patty, Patty, and hit save. Now it has saved it into that Kelley folder so that if I needed to go and retrieve it, I can go and pull it back up. Okay, so that's everything you need to know under the repeat tab. If we were to go to the Pro Stitcher tab now, this one has quite a few things for us to learn about. Number one, a cool feature is let me show you this. If I were to go in settings and hit Stitch Stat, it tells me how long it's going to take me to quilt this quilt. And I look at this before I quilt every single quilt because if I'm on a time crunch and I click on this and it says 3 hours and 47 minutes, I'm going to go find a different design to quilt with this quilt because that's going to take me forever because even though this says only 41 minutes and 8 seconds, this quilt probably truly is going to take her closer to an hour and 15 minutes because this does not account for the time that it's going to take to advance our quilt and use drag and drop, to fix a thread break, to replace a bobbin when it goes empty. It doesn't account for all that time. This is just actually the stitch time that it's going to take. Okay, so that's one thing I do look at before I start quilting. Now, while we're under the Pro Stitcher tab, this is where we would select quilt. If we're ready to quilt this quilt, we would come over here and make sure that stitch is green, our start and end are green, and I personally also turn on, oh my goodness, my program just crashed. Where'd it go? Now, I don't know why that happened, but my program just crashed on me. So you're going to have to give me just a second to boot it back up. Maybe it's just tired of me using it today because I've used it all day long. So there's that quilt that I had saved a while ago. It just doesn't have my area. So I'm going to quickly set my area again. Oops. Okay, and then I'm going to quickly, just for time's sake, make this fit in there real quick for myself. Okay, so there's my quilt. Okay, so back to where we were at, the Pro Stitcher tab. So I always make sure that stitch is highlighted green, start and end is highlighted green, pull up on and pull up auto are also highlighted green, okay? What these settings do is start and end will tack or lock your stitch in place at the start point at every start point and also at every end point. The pull up on and the pull up auto means it'll automatically go and do needle up, needle down to pull your bobbin thread up. And then it'll also move over to the side so that you can easily grab that bobbin thread and pull it up a little bit more and over to the side so you can hold your top and your bottom thread for it to start quilting. Now, there's other things on this little screen right here that you see too. This cut thread does not apply to us. You know, Pro Stitcher is not just designed for Janome machines, it's designed for other brands, and there are other brands out there that have a thread cutter on their machine, and that is where this would come into play for them. We can't use that feature, not yet anyway, maybe when we get another machine, who knows. But down here is a trace bounds and trace area. This trace area, I actually do use it a lot if I am doing custom quilting and I'm doing block designs. You could not physically trace this area for this quilt because you would start hitting bars because our machine can't move down 60 inches the whole length of our quilt. But if this was just a 12 by 12 block and I were to select trace area, what it does is it stitches a line all the way around that area. And basically that stitches in the ditch if it's a block design for you, which is a really cool thing for it to be able to do. Okay. Now trace bounds, if I were to select trace bounds right now, it actually would do the same thing as trace area because our bounds and area are the same. You can't see the bounds right now because I don't have it selected, but if I were to select it right now, and I were to deselect the area, you're going to see that there's a blue box around my quilt. And the blue box represents the outermost bound sides of that design. Now that will change sometimes and not be the same as an area if your design is bigger. So let me just show you what I mean by that. If I were to right now change this to 50, okay, so now my design is bigger than my area, so my bounds definition or the bounds of that design is also bigger than my area. I hope that makes sense for y'all. I don't really do very much with bounds at all. Let me, there we go, get it back to the right size. Okay. So that's what all these buttons over here do. Now, while we're still underneath the Pro Stitcher tab, you have a couple of other things for us to look at. You have the channel locks, which locks your machine horizontally or vertically, but those also are over here on your toolbar and are always on your screen. So typically when I'm going to use those, I don't go to Pro Stitcher to find them. I just use them right over here on my toolbar. You have the move feature. What the move feature does is it moves your needle and sews in any of these directions that these arrows are in right here. This 5 represents how fast it's going to actually stitch in those directions. Now you're probably wondering, when would I use the move feature? I can tell you a very good example. Let's say you've just laid your quilt down on your frame and you're ready to actually tack down the edges and the top of it. But this quilt has a lot of fullness in it and it doesn't want to lay flat. I might use the move feature to tack down my quilt so that I can have both my hands free and I can manipulate and maneuver that fabric as it's tacking it down to try to keep it from getting puckers in it or pinches. That's when I would use the move feature. Other than that, I don't really have any other reasons when I would use the move feature, but I'm sure there are others out there that do. Now, I've already touched on this a little bit. Also underneath the Pro Stitcher tab is where you can go and create new start points and end points inside your design. The record button is a really cool feature. You have two different things you can do under record. You can use the mark or the record. If you were to select record right now and make it green, and then you were to actually quilt something, like I'm going to try. Let me see if I can simulate this. Let's say I am going to, I don't know if you can do this in simulation because it doesn't look like it's working. I was going to try to record my name, but that's not really working. But you could come in here and just free motion quilt a design like a feather or your name, and you can record it and then save it into one of your file folders, and it's there forever and ever, amen, until you don't want it there anymore. Now this mark feature, oh, I love this mark feature. Let me clear this design out. Let me just clear all. When I'm going to use this mark feature, let me get my, now, okay. What it does is it registers stitch lines or creates stitch lines. So if I were to select mark right now, this is where my first stitch line is going to start. I can move my crosshair select mark again, and now I am creating stitch lines, okay? Now, when I use the mark feature, I use it to do stitch in the ditch on my designs instead of using a ruler. Because with mark, I can mark as many places as I want to in that seam of that stitch in the ditch of that design or that block. And I could do 100 of them if I want to and make it as accurate as I can as to how unperfect my square is. I can make my mark feature mimic that. And then when I select run, it's going to sew perfectly a stitch in the ditch around my block because I have shown it all the imperfections in it using the mark feature. So I absolutely love the mark feature. Now, if you're using mark to actually create stitch lines, like I know that I'm not perfect here, but let's just say like a chevron, okay? And you wanted to create multiple rows of this, you could tell it right now that you need to do a jump stitch and then move your crosshair where you need to move it. And you could start another row. Oh, you know what I did? I messed up. So after I do that, after I tell it to do that jump, before I come and set another one, I need to baseline that row of designs. Then I can come and select mark, and it's going to create my next row of stitching for me. And you can do all kinds of cool stuff using this and get very creative. Another good feature to show someone that you're trying to.
Kelly,
Yes.
Ken has a question. Ken, you want to unmute yourself, please?
Thanks. So are you doing this basically, I mean, like solely in the design of a block, or are you looking at an actual quilt on the frame and selecting these mark points?
Both. So this could be a quilt that is just got strips of 5-inch rows over it, and I want to do chevron quilting in each row. And so I might be using reference points, along each of those strips of fabric. Or I might have a quilt that has all these sampler blocks on it. And so I am using that mark feature just on this one block because I want to do stitch in the ditch on it. Am I answering your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I want to make sure, sometimes I don't know if I'm understanding the question correctly, so I want to make sure I'm always explaining what needs to be explained. Okay, so again, this is a great feature to show a consumer of, hey, you can do more than just edge-to-edge quilting with this program. There,
Kelly?
yes.
Joy has a question. Joy, you want to unmute yourself, please?
Thank you. One of the things that I think he may have been asking, is there a way that you are able to see the actual quilt that's on the frame, the fabrics, and be able to translate that into a viewfinder so that you know where your pink starts and the blue ends and the green begins as you're trying to mark those points?
So are you saying a picture of your actual quilt in the background of this screen?
Yes, because otherwise, if it's not perfectly measured, how will you know where those marks change on the actual fabric?
So no, you can't do that. That would be more of bringing it into that program that they sell out there, Electric Quilter or something like that, EQ7 or something. I can't remember. But no, the way you would know that your marks are accurate is because you're physically moving your needle on your quilt, showing it the locations of where you want it to stitch. So you can't see your quilt on the screen, but you are physically looking at your quilt and putting that needle there saying, here's the corner of this block right here, register it, and I select mark. And then I'm going to move it to the top right-hand corner of that block and to be precise, and I'm going to then hit mark. So your needle is what's making it accurate for you. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's perfect, because that means that I'm actually looking at the fabric and marking those points, and it's registering on the computer. So that was the underlying question. I just didn't know how to ask it.
Well, I'm glad we could figure each other out.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So again, this mark feature is an awesome feature to demo. So I'm going to clear all this out. Okay. And then if we continue looking at what's underneath the Pro Stitcher tab, here's your gears. When your gears are orange, that means that everything's engaged where it can know where the X and Y axis is when you are inputting areas, inputting designs, creating a mark line, whatever. But if you select that and they go purple, then the gears have disengaged and now you can free motion quilt, but this machine has a blindfold on it now. It does not know where you're sewing at, okay? Because it doesn't have gears to sit there and track it. So anytime somebody's going to use a Pro Stitcher, they need to always have their gears orange, which their crosshair will also be orange when that happens. Right now, my crosshair is green because I'm simply in simulation mode. Now, let's say that someone has a design up, okay, and they're in their Pro Stitcher program, and they call you and say, the run button is grayed out on my screen. I can't get it to quilt. You can always tell them to come over here to this run status, and it'll tell them why it won't quilt. This one says the quilt panel is not open. Select quilt from the ribbon. So if I were to come up here and select quilt in the ribbon, my run button is now green where I can actually quilt my quilt. Okay, so that run status is a really cool new little icon that has popped up since the last update. Now, if we go to the View tab, this is a very important tab to discuss with your customers to make sure that they don't accidentally, when they're new at this, go in there and change things and then they can't find things. Like they'll say, I'll get a call all the time. My design's not showing up on my screen, but I know I have a design selected because I can see the start points and the end points and the jump stitches. And at the top of it, it tells me the name of my pattern. So why is it not showing up? Well, they probably came in here to view and deselected design. You have to have what you want to see selected as green under the View tab if you want to be able to see it, okay? So if I didn't want to see these jump line marks that are going across from this endpoint to this start point, I could turn the jumps icon off. But when I do that, I also lose the ability of seeing all the start and end points of all the rows. So I like to have that turned on, okay? So that's just a great thing for you to ask them when they say my area is not showing up or my design's not showing up or I had this blue line around my design. Well, go in here and turn the bounds off and then you won't have that blue line showing around your design. Okay, so that's what the View tab is. The Tool tab is where they can come in here and access Pro Stitcher Designer or either Art and Stitch, whichever program they have. Now, I don't encourage this because when you have these two different programs, you only get 2 registrations with them, which means if you have it on your laptop and you have it on your tablet, and then your laptop dies and you have to go buy you a new one at Walmart, when you go to load this program back on there, it's not going to load again because you've used up all your registrations and you're going to have to contact Pro Stitcher Designer and say, I need another registration for my program. I have a new computer. So in my opinion, only use one of those registrations for your computer, your desktop computer, because when you're using Designer, you're going to spend a lot of time in front of that and you're going to want to sit down and be comfortable at a desk. You're not going to want to be standing up at your machine using Designer. And we don't want to encourage people to take their tablet off their machine to go and sit down and use Designer either. The more they take it off that hub that's holding it so tight, the more chances they are to accidentally damage the screen of this tablet because of how hard it is to put it in and out of that, or just unplugging the cables that are plugged into the side of the tablet. They could cause those places to get worn out from pulling them out and putting them in. And we just don't want them to mess with the tablet. We want them to leave it there on their machine. So again, I recommend that they only register their Designer on their actual desktop computer. Okay. Now, if we continue looking at the tabs and we come right here to the settings tabs, this one is a super, super important tab. Okay. This is where we can change the speed of our machine. We can change the stitches per inch that it sews, and we can change the basting stitch. We can change the tie-offs of how many it does, what kind of tie-off it does, the distance between the stitches of the tie-offs. We can turn on the pull-up on and pull-up auto. We can even do this pause delay. What the pause delay does is if you were to turn it on then after it actually starts quilting your design, after it's done it for however many seconds or either inches you have it set, your machine will pause so that you can cut your tails of thread, and then you'll just hit resume and your machine will continue on with the pattern. I personally don't have this turned on my machine, but it's a great feature to show because this is a great thing for beginners to have. Now, the cut thread is of no use to us because, again, we don't have thread cutters on our machine. And I talked to y'all about this stitch stat earlier. This is going to tell you how many stitches are in your design and how long it's going to take it to sew out. Now, the other important button here is this advanced button. This is where they could come and accidentally turn their simulation mode on. And if they turn their simulation mode on, of course, their machine's not going to stitch. It's only going to simulate stitching. If they have turned this on and they don't know how to get out of it, they have to deselect simulation on and off, and then they have to completely reboot their system, or else the simulation being turned off does not actually take. Okay. This verify before quilt, that is that setting box that comes up right before you start to quilt telling you, hey, this is how, I'll show y'all real quick. This is your verifying settings. You have your stitch count tie-offs on 8 with 0.01 distance on a micro stitch. You have your stitches per inch set at 12 and your speed set on 60. It just tells you all of your verification settings that you have before it actually starts your quilt. If you don't want that to show up, you can turn that feature off. Okay. Another thing that I have turned on mine is, let me go back to it, is this start load point at crosshairs. What this means is that anytime I pull a design in, it's going to open it up and attach the first start point of that design to my actual crosshair. You don't have to have that if you don't want to. It's just what I like. Now, that's everything in the settings that's important for us to know. The next little button is the lowercase I with a circle around it, which stands for information. This one's super important because if they select that and then come over here in the ribbon area all the way to the left, they can select about, and it will tell them what, let me get this verification right here off. If we select the little I and about, it tells us what version of Pro Stitcher they're on. So right now, this version of Pro Stitcher is 537. That's the most current version. If they're having issues and you ask them to tell you what version they have, if they don't have this version, the first thing they need to do is go and download it. When you do download and update your version, after they update it, the tablet will automatically reboot itself, but then you need to tell them to completely do a shutdown and reboot of the whole system. Okay. Sometimes if you don't do that, the update does not take effect correctly and things will happen and we'll have to run the update again as a repair. Okay, so that's what the information button is for. There's also this cool button right here that's a blue question mark, okay? What that blue question mark does is if you select it and then you select a button over here and you don't know what that button does, it tells you. It's kind of like a little index glossary of what everything does on the screen. And then right next to that, you can see on my screen is an S for motors, which means I'm in simulation mode. Normally, you'll either have a green lock button here or a maroon unlock button. And what that does is lock your machine in place. So let's say you wanted to lock your machine where it didn't move vertically or horizontally as you advance your quilt. You would lock it in place, and that way your machine won't move. Then you would simply select the unlock button so that your machine could move again after that. Okay. So that's everything about the tabs. Okay. Is there any questions so far? Okay. If there's no questions, then what we're going to do now is I'm just going to show you how to set up a wonky square, which we kind of already done this, but I'll just go over this real quickly. I'm going to set a multi-point area. Whoops. Why is it doing that? I don't know. Oh, I know why it did that, because I didn't have simulation selected. Be smarter than the machine, Kelly. Okay, here we go. Okay. So I have me a block set up right here. Now, typically I would have given it more than 4 points because I know that my squares are not perfect. That way it can be as accurate as possible. And then I would come and get a design, a block design. I'm going to go to my PS designs and block, and I'm going to select this design right here, block 17. Now, the easy, fast, quick way of setting this design up in that block is to just go to the Modify tab and select Skew. And when you select Skew, again, we talked about this, you can do Skew or Border Skew, but 90% of the time you are going to select Border Skew. And it automatically pops that design in there at the perfect size and proportion for the size of the area you have set. Once you've done that, you're just going to select baseline and then you can sew this design out. This is a quick, easy, fast demo to show your customers of how quick and easy they can quilt blocks in a quilt. Okay, so that's how to set up a wonky square. Let's talk about, we did that, never mind. I talked about what, did I not tell y'all about using the crop feature for start and end? I did when we went over crop, I think. I'm forgetting who I've told this to, if it was this morning or if it was y'all.
I don't think you went over it.
I did go over it. Thank you, Mario. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about importing your designs into the Pro Stitcher. You can import one design at a time that you've bought from an outside source, or you can import a whole folder of designs that you've already bought and organized and put in a folder. Okay. To just put a design, one single design in, you're going to go to File, Design, and Open. You're going to go and find your D drive. Right now I'm on my C drive, but if I were to go and find my D drive, I can then see that I have a folder of designs on here, and here are some of the designs. And I could select this African maze and select open. It's going to open it up into the program, but for me to actually save it where I don't have to put a jump stick in my hub every time I want to retrieve this design, I can go to Save, Selected, select my C drive, select my designs, and go and find a folder that I want to save this in, which I personally created my own folder called Kelley. There it is, and I could then save this design into that folder. That way, I can go and retrieve it anytime I want to. Okay, now, if I wanted to move an entire folder of designs into the Pro Stitcher, what I would do is minimize this program and go into the actual part of my tablet where I can see my C drive and my D drive. And I would select that D drive, and here's that folder. And look, it's got tons of designs in it. This is what I was trying to move over earlier when we first started the class today. I could take this design and I could go to my C drive, okay? And then once my C drive is open, I would find this folder called Designs right here. And all I would do is just simply drop this folder into that folder. And when I do, it will put it in alphabetical order with all these other folders that are underneath it. Okay, I'm not going to do that because y'all saw how long it took for it to transfer earlier. But y'all can see on this design folder, I have a folder already named Quilt right here. And it actually has all those designs inside of it. And this is one that I transferred just like that. Okay. So it's really easy to move lots of designs at one time into your Pro Stitcher program. Now, with that being said, here's another thing for you to know how to do. When you are in your design folders and you want to create a new folder like I did with that Kelley or that quilt, you can come up here. Well, first of all, before I start that, if you want to do that, the first thing you want to do is to minimize everything to where you only see designs, and design is highlighted green like this. Then you would select the add a new folder, and you could name this folder. I'm going to name it new folder. And create. And what it does is it created a new folder for me. Now, if I close this out and I go back to File, Design, and Open, I can look in alphabetical order on my C drive at my design folders, and I will go to, what did I just name that?
You, I think.
New. Thank you. there's that new folder I created right here. Now it's empty because I don't have any designs to put into it yet, but I created a new folder. It's so easy. Now, if I don't like that folder or I messed up and I accidentally saved that new folder into one of these other folders and I don't like that, I can just hit the X button and delete that folder and it's gone. Now, if there were anything inside that folder, all of that would be gone too. So you need to be careful about that. I would never want to come down here to this quilt and delete that folder because it would delete all these designs too. Okay.
That quilt folder that you just had, is that one that's already on here? That's stuff that you have
No,
to download.
that's stuff that I purchased and bought and then downloaded to this program.
So any like quilt designs that are on here from Handy Quilter, or is it no? Like
So
um
all these other ones, Kimmy Bruner designs, Linda Goslin, all these are built in. There's over 1,600 designs built into the Pro Stitcher that come with it.
okay.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did.
Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, so are there any questions so far on moving designs, creating folders, anything like that?
There was a lady earlier this morning. She was
Uh-huh.
talking about her subfolder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You
where
wanna-
she accidentally she went and created a folder, but she accidentally saved it inside like this folder right here.
Yeah.
So instead of it just having 4 folders inside the PS design, she had 5 and she named one of them, new I don't know, new folder.
Yeah.
Oops, I didn't mean to do that. So for her to be able to move it with all of her designs and not delete it, she actually would, because you can't take one of these folders and just drag it out. She would have to go to her C drive of her computer again and go to designs and find where that folder is that she didn't mean to put in there and actually drag it back out and drop it into the design folder that's right here. And then that would have corrected her mistake.
Okay. I figured maybe you want to go over that and let these people know since.
Yeah, Mario. Okay. You're right. Okay. So are there any other questions right now? If not,
Eric?
I want to, oh,
Excuse me, Eric has a question.
okay.
Hey,
Yeah.
not about this immediately at hand, but the
When I just snowballed it and I started putting it together and they.
Oh, okay.
So how big is your square and how big is
Eric, you got a question, Eric?
I do. If you've got that folder inside a subfolder, can you also just make a copy of it and then drop it in a new folder and rename it?
Okay, let me see if I understand what you're asking me. So you mean like pull it from here and drop it into another one?
Yeah, just make a copy of that folder or that group of folders, just make a copy of it and then drop it somewhere else.
You would still
You'd
have to,
actually have it in 2 places.
you would have to still go to your C drive to do that. You couldn't do it actually inside the Pro Stitcher program. You would have to come here to your C drive, find your designs. If you want to make a copy of, like, say this continuous lines, you absolutely can, and you can keep it there and move it to a different place on the Pro Stitcher program.
And
But
then
you would
just go
have to,
back and go back and delete the subfolder.
yeah, you could absolutely do that. Yes.
Okay, that's what I want to know. Will it not work in the subfolder? I mean, is there a length, an address length on the files that say, okay, I can only go beyond this folder. I can't go into subfolders. Or will it
No, what the lady did was she accidentally created a folder inside some folders that she didn't want it there.
Right,
That
but
was what,
will it still work?
yeah, it'll still work. Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
cool.
She just didn't want to
So-
have to go inside of a folder to go and retrieve her designs.
Got it. Okay.
She
That
wanted it
answers my
sitting out
question.
here like all these other ones are.
Yeah, so it doesn't really make a difference. You could have a folder inside a folder inside a folder. Pro Stitcher will know where it is and it can run it off it, but it just makes it harder for her to navigate, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Okay, so that's basically everything I wanted to show y'all inside of Pro Stitcher. Now what I'd like to do is show y'all a few of helpful information things before we get into the troubleshooting, okay? So I want y'all to be aware of a couple of different sites that you can tell your customers about, and also you can use that will help you. But this is ProStitcher.com right here, okay? This is where if they do not have Pro Stitcher Designer, they can go and purchase it from here. They cannot actually purchase it from a Janome dealer through Janome. Now, if y'all have some kind of deal that y'all have with Pro Stitcher themselves, and y'all can purchase product from them, then yeah, you could sell it to your customer. But from a Janome standpoint, the only way we can tell customers to get the Pro Stitcher Designer, if it didn't come with their machine, is to go to ProStitcher.com and purchase it here. Okay. Now, Pro Stitcher Designer, let me explain that a little bit, is the digitizing program that we automatically include with the Pro Stitcher, but sometimes you as dealers might have taken that Pro Stitcher Designer out of your first machine that you got and used it as the store copy. And then when you sell your floor model, you don't have that program now to package with the machine when you sell it to a consumer. And that's completely okay. There's nothing wrong with doing that. It's just that consumer needs to know that they're not getting Designer with this because they did buy your floor model machine. And then if they want it, they can come here and go to purchase and purchase it themselves. Now, I'm going to tell you, probably 75% of the people don't even use that because they don't care to learn how to create their own designs. We're only going to see a small margin of our customers that actually want to learn how to do that and do that. With that being said, we also do not, as a Janome, from a Janome standpoint, we do not teach classes on Designer. They can come here and they can get all the educational needs that they need, and they can watch videos or do PDF files of how to do things on the Pro Stitcher Designer. Okay. Now I will tell you one place that we are teaching classes, not Kelley, not Janome Kelley, but someone else that's just a consumer that loves this program. On our Facebook group, she has been teaching a series of classes on Pro Stitcher Designer. Okay. I don't even think that this might be taboo for me to say, but I don't even think you as a dealer should have to be responsible for teaching your customer Pro Stitcher Designer. You are responsible for teaching your customer how to use their machine and how to use the Pro Stitcher program. But Designer is a whole bonus kit for them that they can do on their own. Now, if you know how to use Designer and you can offer classes on it, that just makes you a 10-star dealer instead of a 9-star dealer, okay? It's just icing on the cake. There are people that offer classes. Now they do have to pay for them, offer classes online and in stores that they'll travel to a store and they will do nothing but Designer classes while they're there, and people can pay to come to them. But again, we have not always had Pro Stitcher Designer. When we first started carrying our long arm with the Pro Stitcher, it first came with Art and Stitch. I don't know if any of y'all remember that, but Art and Stitch, the reason why we don't carry that anymore is it's an Australian company owned by mom and pop, and it was very hard when somebody needed a new registration or anything to get them connected with those people because they're on such a different timeline than us, and they were very strict with the protecting their software, which they should be. But it just made things so much more difficult. So Pro Stitcher came out with their own digitizing program and quit using Art and Stitch and started packaging Designer with the Pro Stitcher. Okay. There is one other thing they can come on here and purchase, and that's Pro Stitcher Catalog. And that's where they can have a different program that organizes all of their designs for them. Okay. Now, what's very important on this site for y'all is that this is where they come to get updates. So if we have a new update, they're going to come to ProStitcher.com. They're going to select this Pro Stitcher tab right here, and they're going to go to software. And once they click on the software page, it's going to come to this page right here. And you're going to see there's lots of tabs going across. The only ones your customers should be concerned with is the Premium tab or the Lite tab if they have Pro Stitcher Lite. Okay. Now, when they're on the Premium tab, if they scroll down, they don't have to question which version to get. They just click on that latest version. Even if they have this 4.6 version right now, they do not have to update to this version, to this version, to this version. They can just do the latest version, and it's going to do everything that program needs to be up to date. Okay. Now, when you do go to select the Pro Stitcher update, you can come down here on this page and it will have release notes. These release notes, it's a great thing to print this out and have it for your consumers to see or for you to reference back to. It tells you all the new things that they've done with this program with this new update, whether it's been an improvement to a glitch that we found or it's a new added feature that they've added to it. It also will have already known issues with this current update and the workarounds to fix it. Okay. Some of these glitches will not even be something that affect us because they might be for a specific machine model that we don't sell. Okay. But this is a great thing to always print out and to tell your customers to print out when they do an update. That way, sometimes they don't even have to call you when something weird happens because they're like, that was on those known issues. Let me go and see what it tells me to do for that. Okay. So great source of information right here. Now, when they do go to download this, everybody's computers are different, but they're going to download this update. It's going to download most likely to their download folder on their computer. Okay. I did it earlier today. And this is where it downloaded it, and it's a zipped file. You see how it says zip right here or zip right here? What your consumers might have a hard time understanding is that they can't just take this update and drag it onto a USB stick. They first have to unzip this file or extract the file. When they extract the file, it will then look something like this. Theirs might have a little bit different. It might not be a file folder here. It might be a different icon because they might have a different extraction program than what I have on my computer. But once they have unzipped that file or extracted the file, they can just simply take this and drag it onto a USB stick. Okay, so here's my USB stick. Now it's not going to have enough space on it to put it on it, but I would just take it and drag it and drop it into place. Okay, and it would start sending everything to that USB. Once they've got everything onto their USB drive, they would then take that USB stick and they would go and stick it in the hub behind their tablet. And then on their screen, they would go to File and Update. It would find that update for them. It would show up right here, and they would just double click on it and select Run. Okay. Then they would follow the prompts. They do need to be careful when following the prompts that it will ask them at some point in time, what machine is this update for? And they need to make sure they select their correct model for their machine. If they don't, then it might not. If they have a QuiltMaker Pro 20 and they don't select that, it won't have this gray bar up here at the top where they can access their online screen for their machine settings. Another thing, while we're talking about that, if we were to have to send one of your customers a new tablet because something happened to theirs, and they have a QuiltMaker Pro 20, but the tablet we sent them is reading it as an 18, to correct that, all they have to do is go download the latest version of Pro Stitcher, and then when it asks them what machine they have, they select the correct machine. It's very easy to turn a 20-inch tablet into an 18-inch tablet and vice versa. Okay? Does that all make sense? Is there any questions about that? If there's no questions about that, then I wanted to show y'all just two other things that I think you should be aware of. So I'm going to I'm late. I have to go to a different browser for this. Hold on. Every single one of you and every single one of your consumers that purchase need to go and join this long arm group. It's called Janome Long Arm Users. This is something that will take so many headaches off your plate because they can come here and ask a question and get an answer before they even have to call you and say something's going on with my machine. Okay. They also can come here and get all kinds of educational information. If they come to this page and they select the guide section, this guide section is full of information from them, but the most important guide of all of them is guide number 29, and I'm going to scroll down to it real quick. Oh, look here, y'all. Guide 28 is videos that I made showing you step by step how to update your Pro Stitcher. Now, they're not professionally made. I did them sitting at home, but they're there for those users that need it. It's better than having nothing. So let me go down here to guide number 29. Okay, guide 29, it says live streaming and virtual trainings. this is where we teach every other week a live class where they can sit in on it, they can ask questions as we're teaching it, and then they're recorded and saved here for them to go back and use. If y'all haven't seen this Pro Stitcher troubleshooting for consumers, you really should go watch it because it will help you out as a dealer too. And there's even a handout that I created that you can go and download and print out and have for you. So that this is a wealth of knowledge. Mario just texted me, was I eating while I was doing these videos? Because every time I'm on the phone with him, I'm eating food and he can hear me. But I didn't eat in any of these videos. They're pretty good. No food was consumed. But anyway, this Pro Stitcher troubleshooting video is a great one for y'all to go watch and get this handout and send it to your customers. Okay. One other thing I would like to show y'all is something that we just added. Let me go to YouTube real quick. And Janome. I'm going to go to Janome's YouTube page. And I'm going to go to playlist. And I want to show y'all a few things on here. We just now have started adding some of those Facebook Live videos to YouTube right here under Long Arm Tutorials with Kelley. Because some people are just refusing to go and join Facebook. So we're trying to be as accommodating as we can. They're not going to be able to get all the information that's on YouTube, but we are trying to put videos on here as we can under this tab, okay? Now, also in here, you're going to see that there are Quilt Maker Pro with Kelley McKenzie. These are other videos that we did at Janome in-house that are very professional, that are quick, like 5-minute videos showing you either how to navigate the screen, how to thread your machine, all the basic stuff like that. Then if you keep scrolling down, you're going to see that there is also a video right here, Quilt Maker Pro 16 tutorials. Even if your customer does not own a 16, these videos are great to watch because a lot of them have all the feet that we use and how to use them. So it's not just specifically for the 18. Then we also have Quilt Maker Pro 18 tutorials. Now, some of these are outdated and they would need to disregard because we've had updates since then and we have not been able to update these videos. Eventually, hopefully they will get updated, but there's still some great information in there. And I just wanted to share this with you because to me, the more avenues you have to help your customers that takes a little bit of more work off your plate, the better. And so we're at Janome, we're trying to do everything we can to help you as much as possible with your consumers, because I know that the long arms are a big undertaking for you to take and sell at your store, and we appreciate you carrying those machines for us. So anything that we can do, if you have any suggestions of, hey, I wish y'all would do this, just send me an email and let me know. We'll work on anything that we can do for y'all. So is there any questions about any of these things that I've just shown you? Okay. If not, then let me pull up our troubleshooting stuff.
Would you mind sharing your email address?
Absolutely. Hold on, let me get it for you. There it is. McKenzie@janome-america.com. And here's my cell phone number if you need to text me. You can always text me questions, even if it's after hours. Sometimes I've got my phone beside me and sometimes I don't, but there's my cell. I know it's harder for all of those of y'all on the West Coast because we're on totally different times, but I do try to work somewhat after 5 my time to help y'all out. Sometimes I don't because I have, a life with things in it to do, but I do try to be there for y'all when I can. But there's my email address.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. So now let me pull up. You have another question?
No, thanks.
Okay. Let me pull up our troubleshooting stuff. Okay. So let me go to now. I'm probably going to be adding to this pretty soon before another training because all the troubleshooting guides that we have here, most of them pertain to the Quilt Maker Pro 18. Some of them are for all of our long arms. Like this needle sensor failure is definitely for all of our long arms, but there are some things on here that are specific to just the Quiltmaker Pro 18. Okay, so needle sensor failure. We get this call a lot. 99% of the time, it is because your consumer has jammed up their machine by either breaking a needle or they went through a super thick seam and it jarred the machine and they get this needle sensor failure. To fix that, they need to just turn everything off, make sure they can turn their hand wheel, take their bobbin case out, make sure there's no thread in the bobbin case area that's wound around the hook, clean it all out if there is, make sure the hand wheel turns smoothly. If it does, great. They can turn everything back on and that message should go away. If that message does not go away, then there is a small possibility that sorry, I'm getting stumbled on my words, that their needle sensor has died on them and we need to replace that sensor in the machine. Okay. And then very rarely, very rarely, the main board might need to be replaced, but that's very unusual. Okay. Now, Pro Stitcher tablet not charging, no power, freezing. This is for all of our machines, not just the Quiltmaker Pro 18. Sometimes this happens just because they've moved their finger over the screen too fast, trying to push too many buttons too quickly, and the tablet goes, "You're touching me too much. I don't like to be touched that much. Quit." And it just says, "I'm not doing anything else for you," and it freezes. And the only thing they can do is do a hard shut off and reboot the system. Now, sometimes we don't know why this happens, and it just does. And unfortunately, again, you're just gonna have to do a hard reboot. Sometimes it could be that the touch screen of that tablet is actually starting to go out. If you're getting a issue with your tablet not staying charged, we need to look at a couple of different things with that. First of all, if they say that their tablet's not charging, we need to have them take their tablet off their machine and plug it directly into a power supply in the wall with the charger that came with the tablet and charge it overnight, and then put it back on their machine and see if it will then hold a charge. Sometimes I've done this, it's happened to me. I didn't realize it, but when I shut everything down, I accidentally turned my tablet back on, or it rebooted or opened up by itself, and I didn't know it, and I walked away from my machine until the next day, and because that tablet had nothing charging it, because its charge comes from the carriage, and the carriage was not plugged in, it dies because it's stayed on for as long as it can. So that's why the first thing we do is get them to just charge it overnight again to make sure that there's nothing wrong. Now, it could be that little cable that runs from the tablet to the hub that supplies the power power travels through, that might have gone bad and we need to replace. It could be quite possibly any of the cables that do that. On a Quiltmaker Pro 20, we have recently been noticing that sometimes when this happens, it's actually a data cable in the back of the machine that connects from the carriage to the machine that is causing this, and we have to replace that. That's just been here recently that we've started seeing that issue. Okay, so that's basically the majority of the things that we would look at if their tablet's freezing, not charging, not responding, that we would do. Okay. If you can't figure it out from there, then you're going to be calling me and Mario anyway, and then we're going to be trying to troubleshoot with you. Now, if your Pro Stitcher pattern is not stitching out correctly, it could be a couple of different things. It could be that the spring inside the carriage for the X and Y axis is not tight enough. And if that's the case, you email us, we email you a PDF file and a video that shows you how to correct that. It could be that they're just not doing drag and drop correctly. They're not zooming in close enough on their pattern, and so it's overlapping.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
That thing with the spring that you just mentioned,
Uh-huh.
that video is actually on the Janome Service YouTube page.
Awesome. Yeah, interrupt all you want, Mario. I'm tired of talking.
So if you guys are registered for the Janome YouTube page, which I think most of you are, if you're not, let me know. I can give you the information to get registered, and you're going to see a lot of videos from like the quilters that Kelley does, the service videos of quilters that we do here, plus many other videos. So I just want to let everybody know that.
Another thing that can cause that is just the gears, the white gears that go into the blue tracks might be skipping teeth, and we just need to run a pattern and watch both those gears to see if that's happening. If that's happening, I can't remember if that's happening. I don't know if it's that that oh, it could be a pulley. That's what it is. It could be a pulley inside the carriage that needs to be tightened. So we would have to, again, open it up and look at that. And we have a PDF file on that also. Do you have that anywhere, Mario, for them?
Yeah,
Where they?
I do.
Okay. Okay. Okay, pro-stitcher communication. This is the number one thing and the hardest thing for us to figure out is when they're getting motor errors or any kind of other errors. Sometimes it's simply operator error. Now, we always hope that that's the case, but it's not always. If they're getting a motor error, the first thing we need to do is make sure that they're not accidentally letting the machine tap the back bars. When the machine does hit the back bars, it doesn't make no awful noise where they're like, oh my gosh, it just hit the back bar. It could just barely tap it and they're going to get a motor error. And this will happen if they did not advance their quilt high enough in the area to do the next row of quilting when they're doing edge to edge. Or it could be they picked a pattern that was 17 inches tall and they didn't change the size of it, and that machine just can't physically do a 17-inch pattern. It's going to try to go down all the way to the start point, and it's going to hit a bar because it can't reach the start point because the bar stops it.
Wasn't there something that you said that in the tablet they can change to have the motor error or something like that? There was I think you said it earlier this morning. I
You
think
need
it's
to
like
give me.
a number, like they can go in there and lower the number.
Oh yeah. So sometimes if we are getting motor buffer underflow message.
That's it.
Am I saying? Yeah. If we're getting that message, sometimes that is just, especially on a QuiltMaker Pro 20, it is some tablet settings. It could be that they need to go, and I'll just show you real quick, that they need to come into their settings of their Pro Stitcher tablet and go to motors and change their motor torque to 300. Default is 100. So if their default is 100 and they're getting a motor buffer underflow message, change it to 300 right here. What that motor buffer underflow means is that the line of communication is not traveling fast enough for the machine to do what the Pro Stitcher wants it to do. Okay. Another thing that you would check for is to actually look at their tablet settings themselves and go into the settings of the tablet and into systems and to power and sleep and make sure all their sleep modes are turned on to never. If they have a sleep mode turned on, it can make their machine get that message, and it also can make their machine like start ghost stitching. Okay. Ghost stitching is where the machine is sewing along perfectly fine and then,
Sorry,
hello?
that was
What?
my phone. Sorry.
Oh. If ghost stitching is what we say a machine is doing, and we mostly see it with QuiltMaker Pro 18s, where the machine is stitching out a pattern and all of a sudden the machine continues to move, but this needle quit's going up and down, and sometimes it stops with the needle in the down position and it rips their quilt and it's a big nasty mess, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes when their machines go stitching like that, it is just because they've used it for so long that there's been an unseated connection happen. And to fix that, they have to unplug every single connection, every single cable, every end of every cable, and plug them all back in. Sometimes it's really bad and we have to replace boards and machines, but we hope that that doesn't happen. Okay, if they get a USB error message, I want to talk about that one real quick because I've been getting this a lot lately. Sometimes when they get a USB error message, it is because they have left a USB stick in that hub. Never let your customer leave a USB stick in the hub for any amount of time. I have also been seeing that when people will turn their program on for the first time in the day, if they have a stick in the hub, they will get this message that says, please wait while we correct a problem or something. I can't remember the exact verbiage. And their tablet will never boot up. And it's because they simply have a USB stick in it and it's trying to actually fix something on that USB stick. Okay. Now, sometimes a USB error message is because their data cable has gone bad on their the one that runs from their tablet to their hub, or on a QuiltMaker Pro 20 might run from the bottom of the hub to the front underneath the front cover of the machine. And that's just simply us just having to check these cables and see if that's what the case is. And that does take a little bit of time, but it is what it is. I mean, we are dealing with a lot of different cables and everything else. Now,
Or it could also be probably the board inside the hub with the USB connector, right?
absolutely. Yes, it could. And then we are seeing, especially with the Quiltmaker Pro 20s, that the data cable that runs from the carriage to the back of the machine is not being supported correctly. Now, a long time ago, we sent y'all a bullet on this, but I am going to show it to you again right now. Let me get to it real quick. See if this will show it. Okay, yes. So this is also will be caused from the buffer underflow message. This is the support clip. And when you attach it to this data cable, it needs to be where the screw is to the inside of the machine and the cable is to the outside of the machine, just like this. It at that angle of degree and everything. And then you need to make sure that there is no slack from this plug right here to the cable support clip, okay? All the slack needs to be below it because what happens is there'll be the weight of this cable pulling on the plug right here and it loosens these little wires that are in that plug and it causes damage to them, and then we start having motor error, motor buffer flow messages,
Yeah.
USB messages, all kinds of different error messages that will happen.
I believe you also said that screw shouldn't be so tight either, correct?
Yeah, I think that was something me and you had happen to us
Yeah.
when we were at home office. Yeah, make sure you don't you're not pinching the cable. We
Excuse
don't
me.
want
Ken's got a question.
to. Okay.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Ken.
The new cables coming out, I haven't seen heat shrink on them like in that image right there. Is that something we need to add, or just is it okay without it?
You know,
The new cables you had, see that they don't have the heat shrink on it?
nope,
Correct.
mine don't either on my
It's
machine.
it's just a regular casing, correct?
It's just you can see the exposed individual four little wires.
Yep, you can.
Okay.
I don't know why they don't make them, they don't have that on them anymore. Let me see. I have a different one on it too. I don't know if that's the same one. But mine shows the cabling shows too on mine, and I don't know why we don't have that extra layer of protection, but we don't. That picture that I showed you is super old from the manufacturer, so that must be the way they did it in the beginning when it probably was better.
Yeah.
Okay, so is there any questions on that so far? Now, the next one is encoder and regulation problems. Now, this is where we have to determine, is it really an encoder problem or is it a timing problem? Because people will call and say it's skipping stitches. Well, we need to see where those skip stitches are if there's needle penetration below them, where it actually, the needle still went up and down and went into the fabric, but it just skipped a stitch. If that's the case, it is not an encoder issue. We need to look at the position of their needle to make sure they have their needle in correctly, and then we need to look at their timing, okay? Or we need to see if their quilt top is too tight on their frame and that's making it skip stitches. But if it's an encoder issue, they are going to truly have long stitches with no needle penetration in between those long stitches. And when that happens, we need to make sure their encoder has got enough tension on it, that it's making good contact, and it's always rolling on the machine frame and the carriage. If not, then we might have to replace an encoder. There's not much more you can do once you've established that they're rolling and they seem to be operating correctly. There's not much more we can do but replace them.
The other thing is if they're checking their timing on the machine and they're getting a skip stitch, they could check the finger in front of the machine too, with the against the hook. Because if the finger is too close, it's going to hold the thread for like a millisecond, which is going to cause a skip stitch.
Oh, I just learned something new. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Good to know. And the way to test this is by putting your machine in precision mode, and that way we can see if it's if it's a timing thing or if it's a encoder thing. Okay. Oh, Oh, that's it. That's my last page. Woohoo! And it's 3:45. Okay, so are there any questions about anything that we've talked about today or something we didn't cover that you have a question about?
Yes, Jamie has a question. Jamie, you want to unmute yourself, please?
Yeah, I just wonder if you have this document available, because that didn't download with the other document you provided for class.
I wonder if you clicked on the consumer link instead of the dealer one, because the consumer one doesn't have these. But if you'll just email me, I will be happy to just send you a copy of it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I'll pull my email back up real quick while we're talking.
Oh, I already got it too. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so just email me and I'll be happy to send that to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions?
Ken has a question. Ken, you can unmute yourself.
Okay. Hey, so if I go out on a service call, say it's just an annual service for a long arm, how much of the Pro Stitcher should I investigate before I go, okay, I'm done?
That's a great question, because usually our dealers don't even really look at the Pro Stitcher when they go out and do a service call, and we should be having them do that. One thing that I would look at on the Pro Stitcher if I'm going out for a service call is that front gear on the carriage itself. It will tend to have thread get wrapped around it, and that will also cause that motor buffer underflow because it binds that gear. So we need to always just examine it, make sure there's not any thread collecting around it, take it off if there is. Other than that, Mario, can you think of anything else that they could look at in that carriage? Is there anything, would they need to open it up for any reason at all?
No, there's no need for the carriage to be open.
Okay.
Let me ask you a question, Ken. Are you still there?
I am.
So when you do your service call, you do a PM on the customer's machine. Do you have the lubrication kit for the machine?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody here not have the lubrication kit? Just raise your hand. Okay, because this machine takes, all right, Eric, good. So this machine that needs this lubrication kit because certain areas of the machine need different types of oil. So if you guys got a pen and paper, I'm going to give you the part number for the lubrication kit. I know it's expensive, but you really need this kit whenever you're doing your service calls on these machines and doing those PMs, okay? So the part number for the lubrication kit is QM 49257. I'm going to repeat that one more time. Part number for the lubrication kit is QM 49257. And if you guys are going to be here in March, because we're doing the in-house training, the QM Pro 20 is one of the machines that we're doing. We're going to go over the lubrication kit, why you need the lubrication kit, what's so special about the certain oils for that machine.
Okay, and what if some of the little valves you run out, can we replace components without replacing the whole kit?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Because they sell it as a whole, so you can't buy individual ones.
Mario, do you think that we could find out if maybe that is a possibility that we could get from the manufacturer? Maybe they will let us do that. We need to get Gaz to ask that.
You know what I have to do? I'll email them tomorrow morning and ask.
Yeah, because I understand that's
I
they're
know, I
expensive.
understand that's a very good question
Yeah,
because it's extremely expensive kit.
yeah.
So if you don't need the whole kit, it doesn't make sense to order it. So I'll email them tomorrow morning and I'll find out.
Okay, thank you very
And
much.
I'll copy you on it.
Thank you. Okay. One thing I want to touch on since we're talking about lubrication, you know how a lot of times when you set up these Pro Stitchers, they squeak when you move them front to back when you've got the gears engaged. You can put, and I have a video on this. It's on the Janome YouTube page. A video of showing you how to eliminate that squeaking noise by just putting white lithium grease on that one gear going front to back on the carriage.
The white gear, right?
Yeah. If you go to YouTube, it's a video called Eliminating the, I don't remember. Eliminating the Why? Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry, y'all. Let me just look real quick. I know it's on here. Let's see if it's here.
I remember this because I had one dealer who had to do this.
Oh. Okay, it must be in the 18 playlist, the playlist for the QMP 18. Let me go find it real quick. Because this is something that's very annoying. Everybody complains about it. Alleviating the noise of the Y-axis gear on the Quilt Maker Pro. That's the video that you would want to go watch to see what to do to fix that noise. It's only a minute long, so y'all can watch. Y'all can endure me for 1 minute. Y'all have endured me for 2 hours now. Okay, are there any other questions? If there are no other questions, Mario and I would love to thank y'all for tuning in, because y'all doing this just makes all of us better at our job. We appreciate it. And any knowledge that we can always help you with, we want to. And any knowledge y'all can give us, because we learn from y'all every day too. We really do appreciate it. We appreciate y'all being Janome dealers and carrying the long arm product. But if there is any other questions, you can ask now. Otherwise, we're fixing to end this call.
And I also hope that I see a lot of you guys come March for in-house training. So just talk to your DSMs about the in-house training. You guys also should have gotten an email notifying you about in-house training. And like I said, this is one of the machines that we actually do for in-house, and we literally take the machine apart. So.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much. And if y'all need this training again, it was recorded and we'll have it on the dealer Janome page. But
Yeah.
also we will teach this again. So you're always welcome to join it again.
All right, guys, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot for the training course. Very good.
You're welcome.